I'm currently working on a story-driven first-person shooter, and for the last month, I've had one goal: make gameplay fun. So far, we've already got decent gunplay, but it doesn't really stand on its own 2 feet when compared to other FPS games. So, in order to make the gameplay unique and addicting, we're gonna need to add layers on top of the guns, starting with the cyber mode. Now, I actually introduced this system in the last video, but for those of you who don't know, the cyber mode is effectively an overpowered state the player can enter for short periods of time. The system is meant to allow the player to experience a secondary form of gameplay on top of the guns, similar to how Titans work in Titanfall. Now, although this mechanic is already functional, we need to make it look and feel a lot better. Originally, I was going to give these weapons a style similar to the Forerunner weapons from Halo, but that concept didn't exactly fit the cyber aesthetic I was going for. Instead, I ended up sticking with the cube design, and after adding some nice effects and particle systems, the cubes were already looking a lot better. I then added some sway to the weapons so that they felt more grounded, and as a cherry on top, I added some power orbs and an outline shader. After working on this outline effect, I actually have beef with shaders. I spent an entire day reading about outlines and dealing with shader problems, and at the end of the day, I came to the heartbreaking truth that all I needed was 2 nodes. Another thing I mentioned in the last video was that it wasn't obvious enough when you entered this mode. So, in order to emphasize the change, I added some environmental particle systems. Now, a secondary form of combat is cool, but you know what's more important? Being able to interact with the environment. Probably one of my favorite ways to do this in video games is with a grab mechanic. My game's version of this mechanic is the magnet, which I also introduced a while back. Because of how versatile this mechanic is, I plan to make it a central part of the game. But the problem is that it feels absolutely terrible to use. There isn't any animation or indicator that you've picked up an object when you use the magnet. When trying to figure out how to indicate this ability, I came across some footage from the finals, and although I've never actually played this game, I love their use of shaders in the grab mechanic. After adding a similar animation, I got to work replicating the shaders. There are 2 parts to this effect, the outline and the glowing grid. The outline was easy since I just reused the shader we made earlier, and for the glowing grid, I created a triplanar material and then tiled its alpha with time. Now, the reason I love this mechanic so much is that it's so versatile and allows the player to interact with the environment around them on another level. For example, I was originally going to add a shield ability, but then realized that the player can just grab objects around them and use them as shields. On top of combat, I also want this game to have a lot of exploration and puzzling, and this magnet ability allows me to do exactly that. For example, you can open doors with keys, use environmental props to traverse the environment, get around traps, and can solve many other kinds of puzzles with the magnet. Now, just like how the magnet allows the player to interact with the environment, I want to create environmental props that interact with the player. To start doing that, I've created some simple functionality like jump pads, destructible regions, and I've also refined the door system I set up earlier. This is just a start, but I have plans for tons of environmental props, systems, and mechanics that combine level design with combat. So, I've been working very hard on features, and I think I deserve a little break to work on some graphics. One of the biggest graphical issues my game has faced is skyboxes. The majority of the game's environments are supposed to be in outer space, but the skyboxes have clouds and are just super random. Now, you might be wondering why I didn't just take a nebula image and turn it into a Unity skybox. Well, that's because it looks terrible. The post-processing is so extreme that the nebula looks almost entirely black, and even without the post-processing, the skybox just ends up looking really flat and ugly. Well, one day, while playing around with skyboxes, I accidentally enabled my fog shader, and to my surprise, this looked amazing. I then tried to create some better nebula images with the help of some tutorials, but the results still felt like they were missing something. So, after scouring the internet for nebula images, I came across this one creator called Tim Barden, and his nebula skyboxes are genuinely incredible. Although his nebulas fall under copyright protection, I decided to download some of them to see what they would look like in my game, and the result actually blew my mind. I've reached out to him regarding pricing for a license, and I really hope I can use these stunning skyboxes in my game. Now, just before we continue with the video, I'd like to quickly introduce Brilliant, today's sponsor. Brilliant is a digital platform made to effectively help you get smarter, with lessons in math, programming, and artificial intelligence. In order to help you form daily learning habits, Brilliant is also made to help you learn on the go, allowing you to learn anywhere at any time, right from the comfort of your phone. Brilliant's ability to teach a full range of topics from programming to data analysis allows it to develop your comprehension, fine-tune your intuition, and build real skills. For example, while learning about LLMs, you can develop real programming skills and increase your comprehension of modern-day chatbots like ChatGPT. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, you can visit brilliant.org/theunityguy, scan the QR code on screen, or click the link in the description. Using these, you'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. In addition to the magnet and the cyber mode, I think an ability system is very important. When I originally implemented the ability system in the last video, it worked using an ability wheel to select abilities and a stamina system when using abilities. However, because of how central the dash and the magnet mechanics are, I've given them their own separate keys. Without the dash and the magnet, the remaining abilities in the ability wheel are all very similar, whether it's the mine or the gravity well. All of these abilities function like grenades, so I've now decided to set it up so that when entering a level, the dash, the magnet, and the throwable weapon of your choice all have their own keys. And while testing around with this system, it actually isn't as overwhelming as I originally thought it would be. But okay, everything we've done up until this point is cool, but it doesn't really matter if the player can't actually die. Up until this point, the player has had a functioning health bar, but when their health reached 0, nothing actually happened. So we need to add a death effect. My plan going into this was to make the camera fall down to the ground and then kind of fade away afterwards. After trying a ton of ways to do this, I decided to try attaching the camera to a fallen cube with physics collisions, and honestly, this looks great. I've also set up a regenerating shield and health system, just like what we see in Halo. With all of that out of the way, the one thing I want to add to the system is better effects when the player takes damage, heals, or begins regenerating their shield. I really want to go in the direction of the effects seen in Apex Legends. But yeah, that's it for combat. We've got guns, a cyber rage mode, a magnet, abilities, and a proper health system, along with some environmental interactions which I want to build upon in the future. Over the next few months, I'm going to now shift my focus to 2 new things: enemies and level design. These are 2 things I've been super excited to start, but I've always been hesitant considering how bad player-side combat used to be. But with that said, thank you for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one.